up more than 50% in just 1 week. Will this rally be short-lived, or is it a sign of more growth ahead? MarketBeat analyst Chris Markoch joins us now with a list of 3 quantum computing stocks that have real long-term potential. Chris, we are talking about these names again because for the last week, we've seen yet another rally in the quantum computing space. If you've been following this sector, you've seen these stocks kind of move as a group, and they generally tend to move on news. Whenever they're in the news again, the stocks rally again. So what is it this time?
Well, you might not have known it, Bridget, but there was a holiday last week. I didn't get you a gift, but there was a holiday. It was called World Quantum Day, and it was on April 14th, which has significance for quantum enthusiasts. It was a date that was started in 2021 as a way to raise awareness of quantum science and technology. And literally, that's probably about the only reason why a lot of these stocks moved up. But the sector moved up as a block. And right now, the gains have leveled off and some stocks have pulled back a little since then. So I think it was a little bit of fun. And it does show the fact that quantum computing is starting to gain some traction among investors, as we've known.
So interesting. A holiday for quantum investors for sure. Keep in mind for next year to see if something happens like this again, to see the kind of jump that we've seen. But whenever a rally happens in quantum, it's a time to actually start looking at it for investors again. A lot of these stocks have been down, like you said, for the last few months. So viewers have been asking, when are quantum stocks coming back? Has anything fundamentally changed in the quantum computing story? Did this move have anything to do with some actual contract or new development or announcement, or was it all just based on kind of being back in the headlines again?
I think it's more just headline driven. I haven't seen anything that would have caused any of these individual stocks to jump up significantly. Again, I think this is a space that it's tantalizing because of the potential of it, but I think it is important for investors to realize we're still a ways away from commercialization. That doesn't mean the stocks are uninvestable. It just means that if you're looking at these stocks and you're looking at it as a way of getting rich quick, that's probably not going to happen, especially if you get them at the prices they're at now, when some of that initial enthusiasm has waned a little bit.
Yeah, so many of these moves are kind of just based on smoke and mirrors. I think the question is, why is this such a long-term investment? Why is it taking so long, and how much longer might it have before we start to see some real commercialization of quantum computing companies?
Yeah, so right now we're at a stage where the hardware exists, but it's still very error prone. It's still hard to scale, and it's just nowhere near ready to use for commercial use. And I think it's that ready to scale part that's really the issue here. Some of these machines costs millions of dollars to produce just one machine. And at a time when companies are already scaling up for AI, are we really scaling up for the next thing? And because in a lot of cases, many people feel quantum is going to replace AI. So it's a funding issue. It's a lot of, and that's causing the commercial case to be years away, not as close as maybe some investors would like.
Yeah, but in the meantime, expect these stocks to move on rallies just like the one we're seeing this week and drop on other times too. And that's the kind of stock that you are looking for. You'd also be interested in this article that just came out this week on 5 companies set to see some moves this week based on a new SEC ruling. We had a video out on it yesterday. Well, there's a special article that you can read on marketbeat.com as well. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description to get that article for free right now on marketbeat.com. It's a really interesting read. You want to check that one out. Okay, Chris, let's get into the 3 quantum computing companies you have for us today. There's new names entering this pool. There's a group of quantum stocks that like to move on their own, but we want to talk about the ones that are really worth looking at long term for that real potential, even though they're all pretty speculative still. What's the first company on this list for you?
It's IonQ. The ticker symbol is IONQ. It's arguably the most pure play quantum company on the public markets. And there's a good reason for that. With a lot of these companies we're going to be talking about today, none of them are profitable yet. But in the case of IonQ, the company is generating actual revenue. For the full year 2025, the company reported approximately $130 million in full year GAAP revenue. So it made it the first publicly traded quantum computing company to cross that 100 million annual revenue threshold. To put that in a different context, that revenue was up 200% year over year. So this is a company that does have actual revenue on the books.
Yeah, that's a big jump. To have 200% revenue growth in a year is a big deal for a company like this. Has that made a difference in the stock price? I know if you look at the group of
Right.
quantum computing stocks, which we're going to look at a few of those today, this one does seem to be a little bit of a leader. It seems to be growing at a faster rate, maybe, than some of the other stocks in the market.
I think that's fair to say. I mean, the stock's up 93% in the last 12 months, but that includes a pretty sharp pullback since the middle of October. So a lot of the quantum stocks investors will see have followed a lot of the technology stocks, and they followed them lower since the middle of October over concerns of the AI bubble and other issues and sector rotation and all that. So the stock's fallen quite a bit. Let's see, it was up at over $82 in the middle of October, and now it's trading at about 46. So it's been basically cut in half. And that's even with the rally we've seen in the last week. So again, it's a speculative stock. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for investors that are not comfortable with the risk associated with them. But again, investors are looking at these stocks because of their potential.
Yeah, be ready for volatility in quantum computing stocks. We've been talking about these on the channel for over a year, and we have seen that time and time again. They'll have a big rally and it will eventually fall off.
Right.
And I think that this is kind of a day trader's paradise. They like these kind of stocks that have big moves. But for retail investors who are looking at
Right.
these as long, buy and hold stocks, what is your thought for IonQ over some of the other names in the quantum computing space? Is this one less volatile? Does it have a greater potential? What makes this one stand out as the first stock on your list in a space where all of these stocks see quite a bit of volatility?
I think in terms of trying to game plan which stocks are going to be more or less volatile, I don't know. This one does have some sound analyst support. Analysts have a price target on this thing of over $69 at the time we're taping this. So that would be an upside of almost 50% from where it's at now. That's impressive. What you're going to be wanting to look at with these companies is sort of what is their business model. And in the case of IonQ, their business model is based on their underlying technology. In this case, they're using trapped ion technology. We don't have the time to go into everything that means, but one of the big advantages of trapped ion technology, according to industry experts, is accuracy. So the computers that IonQ is developing tend to have lower error rates, which we said in the beginning. That's one of the fundamental problems with the industry right now. And so what happens is if they have fewer errors, they're going to be more likely to be useful in different applications. Now, the trade-off of that is scale. It's physically challenging to trap these ions the way that IonQ needs them to be done. So it may take them a lot longer to get this technology to scale. But if they can do it, there might be a payoff. You're going to hear this argument a lot with a lot of these other companies. But that's the reason, if you believe in that kind of technology and where it could go, IonQ may be the choice for you.
All right, a good first stock to look at on this list. Let's get on to the second name. And this is another one that a lot of people think about first when they think about quantum computing stocks.
Yeah, so this is another one. This is stocks up about 129% in the last year. It's Rigetti. Ticker symbol is RGTI. Now, they're trying to build every aspect of the quantum space. So for everything from chip fabrication to system integration, delivery over the cloud, they're doing all of that. They're not buying components from suppliers and assembling them. They have their own fab facility as far as chips go. So that gives them deep intellectual property ownership. It can give them a moat in this field that maybe other companies will lack. However, that sets them up for enormous execution risk. Company only generated about $7 million in revenue in 2025. Again, this is a company that they're not yet profitable. So again, there's risks and rewards. There's trade-offs to the thesis.
Yeah, one question I have for
Mhm.
not only Rigetti, but all the stocks on this list, especially the last one you have coming up, which is kind of a newer name to this quantum computing race. But for any of these companies, it's so early.
Right.
There's so much investment needed to actually make this happen. Is it possible that some of these companies just aren't here long term?
That's always the risk. I think there's also an opportunity perhaps there, and that some of these companies may cannibalize each other. They may merge with bigger names in other sectors. But yes, that's always a risk. The thing about a lot of these companies right now is a lot of retail investors rushed into these stocks, and it's understandable why they did it, but a lot of these stocks are tremendously overvalued by traditional measures. In the case of Rigetti, their price to sales ratio is over 895 times. And this is
Wow.
a company, again, that's 895 times sales, and this is a company that's not generating any profit yet. So there's really no line of sight as far as where their revenue might go.
It's more so investing in an idea in a hope that in the future, this is going to work and this is going to pay off. But know that you're taking a risk when you invest in an idea rather than the actual money coming in the door at the moment. It makes it a different story for sure.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from our viewers out there who are really passionate about quantum computing. Are you investing in more than the idea, or is that what you were investing? I want to hear your take on that too. Chris, I want to talk a little bit about the actual price action in this one. Again, you look at the chart for Rigetti, it's super similar to IonQ. They do tend to move together. I think the question some investors who maybe got in during all the hype when these stocks were getting really far ahead of themselves is how long could the rally we're in right now last? Could it go even higher? How long will it take to recover to the all-time highs we saw last year? Or is this just a short-term rally to maybe gain back a little profits from what you'd lost from that downtrend? What's your take on the price action on this stock?
Well, I think it's gonna take a while to get back to the levels that it was at in October. I think that's just something that investors need to be honest with themselves about. If you look at Rigetti, analysts are projecting a price target of around $30, and that's about a gain of over 60% from where it is as we're talking today, and that's nice, but if you look at it on the chart, that only takes it about halfway to where it was when it started selling off in October. So the froth was there. You can kind of see you see it on the IonQ chart, you see it on the Rigetti chart as well. You see that hyperbolic growth, that parabolic growth from about from September to October of last year. I mean, it was that hockey stick move, and whenever you see that, you're likely to see the other side of that. That's what investors are seeing now. So yeah, if you bought it at that peak, at that top, probably most of those investors have gotten out and they're looking for, is this the time to get back in? And my answer is, it may be. The stock's gone down far enough that yes, this may be the time to get back in. But again, I think there's no reason why you have to go all in right now. You can scale in gradually, follow the news, see where the company might be going, see if this is a valid investment, see if it's going to pay off, if those analyst price targets keep moving higher, and you can follow the stock up that way.
Yeah, you said follow the news, and it just made me think about, I feel like with these quantum stocks, I know we're talking about this video today
Right.
because quantum computing stocks have seen this rally, they're back in the news again. But I feel like if you actually want to add quantum stocks to your portfolio, maybe don't follow the news. Follow the times when you haven't heard about quantum stocks in a while. Maybe then is the time to actually look at their charts and see,
Right.
okay, is this low enough to where I might want to jump in? What do you think about that concept for these names in particular?
Well, I think I would just amend your statement a little bit to say follow the news, but don't follow the headlines, because I think that's just it. We get sucked into the headline story, and we don't actually. I think with the quantum computing sector, it's really important to look at what the news is, because that's going to let you know what the timeline is. Because I think a lot of this, I see some parallels to what's happening with the eVTOL space, where the eVTOL got kind of frothy and now it's pulled back, and now you have a lot of the companies that are just kind of chopping along, and they all, there's different stories for each one, but now investors have realized that it's going to take a little longer than they thought before those get to commercialization. And I think you're seeing the same thing in the quantum space. It's just to go from this idea to getting to the actual commercialization is just going to take some time.
It takes time is really the main thesis of any quantum computing story that we talk about. It's not quite yet.
Yep.
We're getting there. There's new developments happening. But if you are an investor looking at these, don't expect to cash out in the next couple of months. And I think over the next few years, until this really takes off, we might see some more companies popping up in this space. And that is where our last stock is. This is a relatively new public name in the quantum computing sector. And this is one that I want to add to my Bridget's Buys watch list. This is our paper trading watch list on marketbeat.com/Bridget. You can scan the QR code too if you want to check out this watch list and follow along with some of the stocks that we talk about on this channel. This last name is an interesting one for a lot of reasons. So let's dive into it, Chris.
This might be the least familiar to some of the viewers. Some of them may know about it. It didn't go public until I think July of last year, and it actually is kind of symbolic of everything that happened with the quantum space because it went public in July. Timing is everything, and just like a lot of the other quantum stocks, in September, you saw this ticker make the hockey stick move. When it went public, it was only trading at about $10 a share, which is what most of these stocks do, and this went all the way up to 25, so a lot of investors were getting excited about it. Well, today it's back down to $14, and that's even after a pretty strong price move in the last couple of weeks. So the company's name is Inflection. It's spelled INFLEQTION, and the ticker symbol is INFQ. The story behind Inflection, if you remember what I was saying earlier about IonQ, how their technology was the trapped ion technology, Inflection uses a different type of ion technology. They're doing what's called neutral atom quantum computing. I'm not going to attempt to explain that in the time we have, but what I would tell you is, if you remember what I was saying about IonQ, I said the challenge with IonQ was that the trapped ion technology is not highly scalable. This technology is highly scalable. At least that's what analysts say. So the idea is it could get the company to a commercial application much faster. NVIDIA selected Inflection to use NVIDIA AI, so that's been a feather in the cap. It's also a reason why a lot of investors are bullish on Inflection, and investors are interested in the company because they have a dual business model. Now, they're not just developing quantum computing, but they're also trying to do quantum sensing products.
Yeah, that NVIDIA news is exactly the kind of news that you want to pay attention to for a stock like this because it makes a big difference in where it could be going. So that's a real news piece that could impact the future success of the company. So that's a great headline to look at for this one. Let's talk a little bit more about what analysts are saying. It's such a new company, not even a year old in the public space yet. Is there a bullishness on this company? Is it getting analyst attention yet, or is it still too new?
It's new, and there's only two analysts that MarketBeat shows that are covering it. But one of those analysts is Citigroup, and the other one's BTIG. So these are well-known analysts. It's sometimes when you get to see these companies that are only covered by one or two analysts, the names are not names that are considered household names to investors. These two are, and they're bullish on the company. The consensus price target is $21, and that's about a 40% increase from where it's at as we're taping this. So again, a lot of these companies, analysts are believing they could have a much higher price than they currently have. A lot of it's going to depend on how well these companies execute. And I can't stress that enough. Execution risk is a thing for all three of these companies, and it's really going to determine what the short term and ultimately the long term outlook for quantum computing is.
Yeah, and I think it'll determine which stocks are still here 5 to 10 years down the road when this is potentially commercial product that's making money and revenue for these companies.
Right.
So thank you, Chris, so much for diving into this today. If you are interested in a deeper dive into the quantum computing space and exploring other names that could be popular in the future and have that long-term potential, watch this other video we had on quantum computing. It's an interesting conversation. You can check out that video here.